Welcome to the channel. This series is called Panel Deep Dive, where we don't read comics, we study them. Each episode, I'll choose 2 comics that I've recently read, and I won't be doing a review, but I'll be doing a top-down look over where I discuss what's working about these comics and what I enjoyed about them, kind of from an artist perspective. From layout to line work, tone to technique, these are the moments that stuck with me and why I think they're worth checking out. If you love the craft of comics, stick around. Today, we're going over The Cartoonist Club by Raina, Telgemeier, and Scott McCloud, and Making Comics by Scott McCloud. You might be thinking, Scott McCloud worked on both of these books. What could they possibly have in common? Well, we're about to find out. Alright, let's start with The Cartoonist Club. So, this is another book that I found while I was cruising the shelves of my local library. I happened to have been in the kids section, and what caught me was the spine, The Cartoonist Club, and the fact that it said new. But once I pulled it from the shelf and I saw that it was by Raina, Telgemeier, and Scott McCloud, I knew I had to pick this up because I've been hearing how Raina is a New York Times bestselling. Both authors are actually. And then Scott McCloud, you may know him from Making Comics, as I've said before. I really was just curious as to what this was all about. I really didn't read into it, but for the purposes of this video, I will do that. Alright, welcome to the club. Michaela is bursting with ideas but doesn't know how to make them into a story. Howard loves to draw, but he struggles to come up with ideas, and his dad thinks comics are a waste of time. Linda constantly draws in her sketchbook but keeps focusing on what she feels are mistakes. And Art simply loves being creative and is excited to try something new. They come together to form the Cartoonist Club, where kids can learn about making comics and using their creativity and imagination for their own storytelling. Now, once again, I did not read what this was about. I just saw these 2 names. I saw the Cartoonist Club, and I was like, this is probably going to be really good. I figured that this was going to be really good, and I was not disappointed. I actually read this whole book in one, 2-hour session. A little less, it just depends. I can't remember exactly, but the second I started reading the story, I just knew that I wanted to finish it. In chapter 1, introduced to Michaela and her morning. And this character is very chaotic. She's having very vivid dreams. She's thinking about it while she's getting ready for school. Parents want her to hurry up and make the carpool. They don't have time to hear her stories, but she cannot stop thinking about that idea that just came into her head. And I really loved how portrayed this whole thing. Like, her eyes are closed, like she's dreaming. We have this giant thought bubble where she is envisioning in this world. Here, brushing her teeth, brushing her hair, combing her hair, envisioning this world. Daydreaming while she's being driven to school, envisioning the story unfolding. And then this big panel where she is doing the same thing about this character. Now, this is where we get introduced to our second character, Howard, and he likes to draw little squibbles. Now, the teacher's giving a math lesson, and he is making a joke about said math lesson. Introductions done in this book to these characters are just really well done. You immediately understand these 2 characters, what they're into. He's the kid who's been drawing in class, doodling in his notebook paper. She's the kid who's always daydreaming. She wants to see more of his pictures at this point, and he's like, yeah, I'll show you. And literally, all he has are all these doodles. He believes that they're not very good, but she's excited about all of his wild ideas. And at that point on, they just start talking about how he has stories, he has ideas, and they're thinking about working together to create a story. they start coming up with this new story, a chicken nugget, a hot dog, and one's evil, one's the hero. It's just a really enduring story. Chapter 2, you meet our third character, Linda, and you find her in the library and she's drawing. She's not even trying to pay attention, not even trying to notice. These two come in all loud, blah, 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 blah. And then she moves away from them. But all she hears is blah, 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 Mr. Rugged, blah, 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 lunchtime, blah, 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 comics. And that's what piques her interest. The way they and Raina figured out how to handle, like, dialogue. Like, could have literally put actual dialogue in this book, but knowing how kids are, they're like, I'm just going to put in blah 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 and then just the key words that are going to pop out. They actually do this trope again a couple more times and it's really effective. And just love how comics is bolded. You have the attention, eyes open, and now she's interested. And that's when you actually start hearing them come up with a story. So at this point, we believe that she's listening, doodling these characters, this evil chicken nugget character, and, you know, just kind of side chuckling. Now this character, at this point, they're just trying to figure out, well, how do you make a comic? And she has the words, and he's like, cool, but this is a story that you wrote. How do you turn it into a comic? And at this point, this book becomes really interesting because the reader, as they are learning how to make comics, you are also learning how to make comics. And so here you go. I broke up the story into chunks and copied the words into panel boxes that you can draw in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They immediately noticed the problem that all artists / writers struggle with is that the writer has way too many words, the writer side of you has too many words, and the art side of you, the artist in you, wants more space for your art. It doesn't leave much room for the art part. So draw really small, or write fewer words, or compromise. And this is when you get introduced to a really important character in this book, Miss Fatima, the library teacher. And she starts helping them figure out how they can both work together to make their comic. I really enjoyed this character, Miss Fatima. I'm not sure if she was inspired by a real person or not, or just an amalgamation of people, but we really do need more people like this woman or like this person who inspires people to create things. The kids start asking some pivotal questions. So which comes first, the comics the picture or the words? Well, in comics, you want the pictures and words to work together to tell stories. But where do we start? Do we write a script or just start drawing? Also, how do you write a script? And what's the right kind of paper? Like, Michaela has all these questions and she's just wanting to know more and more and more. And Miss Fatima says, you know what? These are great questions. I think I know some of the answers, but I'll do a little research for you. And what's great about this part, or at least this persona, is that she doesn't just immediately act like she has all the answers. Because a lot of teacher characters in books, they're not well written. They assume the role that they have all the knowledge. But this kind of makes Miss Fatima a real person because she says, like, I might have some of the answers, but let me do some research. So I just thought that was really great character building. At this point, they decide to make a club where they're going to meet in the library and they're going to call it the Cartoonist Club. So that's where you get the title of the book. Miss Fatima asks Linda, like, hey, are you, I've got to close up. Are you going to join the club? I know how much you like to draw. And Linda is very guarded about the idea and her sketchbook, but she does take one of the flyers that the kids made. Chapter 3. Every chapter in this book, you could consider it an issue of a comic, which it is. But because it's a kid's book, it's a graphic novel, the whole story was told at one time. They're doing chapters, which is respectable. I really like how they even designed this, announcing the Cartoonist Club Wednesdays at 3:15 in the Craft Middle School Library. I like comics. Me too, me too. Let's form a club. Questions, see Miss Fatima. And this is how they're getting people to show up. So now it's the day where they are waiting anxiously for people to show up for their club. And the first person that opens the door is Linda. And they think like, are you joining our club? And she just keeps on walking, and she goes over to the graphic novel section and starts. They notice this, but they don't give her any issues. Now this character gets introduced, and his name is Howard. He immediately says like, hey, I'm here to meet for the comic club. And Michaela rushes in, introduces herself. He does his pronouns, and then they're off to a great site where you've got Howard, that's the artist, Michaela, that's the writer. And they're like, so, do you like to write, draw, or both? And he's like, actually, I really just like to make stuff. And so then he goes on a laundry list of things that he likes to make. And he's like, I thought it'd be cool to try making comics. He shares his art supplies with them. It's pretty cool that this is a very unique way to introduce him to the group and begin drawing. At this point, now Miss Fatima has come back. It's the next day, and she is going to tell them the answers to all the questions. And surprise, surprise, there are no right answers. And then they just start talking about how to make comics. And this is where this book really shines. You're getting a story of these kids and how they want to make comics. They want to bring their ideas to life, but they don't know how. You have a mentor character teaching them how. And this, just like I said, I could talk about making comics or comics all day. So this really spoke to me, this section of the book. She wants to borrow, or she has a pen that Michaela was looking for. And Linda's like, hey, you can borrow the pen. Is this the sable brush? Because Michaela was freaking out about this particular brush that she was told some professional artists use. At this point, Linda still isn't ready to join the club, but she's always drawing. And this gets more into Linda's story, where she's like, hey, she follows her over. You know, you're welcome to join us over there. We'd love to have you. Plenty of room, cool tools. Linda's like, yeah, I know. And then she's like, can I see at least? It's just, I'm not very good. It's okay. We're all here to practice and have fun. Okay, but you have to promise not to laugh. Cartoonist Club promise. So finally, Linda gives up the courage, opens her book, and Michaela's like, gasp. It's terrible. I know. You hate it. Now, this is great pacing or page setup. You're getting this introduction. We don't see what Michaela sees, but this is encouraging us to turn the page because we want to know, did Linda draw? And so you turn the page, and then you see her drawings. And that's just a really great setup. Okay, I just noticed that for the coloring aspect, the Raina and Scott kept the color palettes the same throughout the book. So Michaela's always in purple, Howard always has the blue, and Art is always in the green, and then Linda's in the yellow. I didn't notice that the first time I was looking through this, but I'm noticing it now. Alright, so in chapter 4, you get a little bit more of Howard's backstory, where his dad's like, Howard, lights out, knock. Just 5 more minutes, Dad. And you see him scribbling right there. He's got all of his comic books spread out. He's got his notebook with the story. He's supposedly studying, but no, he's actually just making comics. And I love how instead, even though Scholastic prints Dogman, the big book of dog guy, as a, mock-up. Love it. But here we find out that his dad does not think comics is worthy. Like what did we promise? No comics on a school night. But as he goes to sleep, he's thinking about those comic characters that he created. They come back the next day, and then this is, Linda's now joining the club, and this is great. Miss Fatima says, okay, ready to make some terrible comics? Yeah, what? Great transition. I thought we were gonna learn how to make good comics. You've got to start somewhere, and this is facts. And this book actually has a lot of good ideas, like I said, just to get you started. So this introduces the idea of if you have a group of friends, you all basically come up with whatever idea. You're titling the comic your way. So they're all doing Kiki's Bad Hair Day, Robot versus Cow Doy, Best in Show, Dinosaur Dance Party. They drew their logos, their titles, and then and Miss Fatima tells them to switch it. And she's explaining that basically what they're going to do is draw each other's comics. So now they're not drawing their own comic, they're drawing somebody else's comic. And it's really smart because you can easily get out of your own head because it's not attached to the title. Now it's up to you what you do with it, because every person is going to have another different idea. He's like, I love your drawing. Wow, I love drawing robots, Howard. But what's a cow doy? Huh? Should be cow. Oh, whoops. I'll fix it. Scribbles. And now, cow dog it is. And so they've got 20 minutes to draw their comics. So they all come up with something different. And I love how each style is different for each comic. Best in Show, it's a comic about dogs. Kiki's Bad Hair Day versus Cow Dog, which he uses stickers and symbols. He used animal stickers instead of drawing the cow and the dog himself. And then we finally get to Linda's drawing, and it's just a dinosaur head and says, everybody dance. I couldn't even finish the first panel. They're trying to be encouraging, oh, how beautiful it is. And she's like, I wanted to do a whole comic, but I wasted all my time getting the head right. It wasn't a waste. The rest of us were just a little messier. These are called Quanto comics because they're all about the quantity, not the quality. So you make a lot of messy drawings instead of one perfect drawing. Yeah. And so she wants another chance to work on the comic. While they're talking about the comic, they're giving her ideas to keep it messy. And then you finally get to see her finished comic, which is great. Wow, now a beautiful mess. What's great about this story is that each character represents some artist or some writer that's exactly this way. You have shame, or you're worried that your parents or your friends aren't going to respect you because you like making comics, or you have so many ideas in your head, all these great stories, but you can't draw, so you don't. Or you draw really well, but because you're a perfectionist at drawing, you hold yourself back from actually completing anything because you're worried that it won't come out perfect, it won't come out right. And then you've got the kid who's willing to try anything and do anything, which is great. And then of course you've got someone, an adult, that you can ask questions to. This is a really great book. This is a really great story. Gets more into all of the characters later, and there is an overall plot, like they're learning how to make comics, and it's just a really great story. I really loved it. And I even learned a couple things because I didn't know how to make a zine before I read this book, and this book gives you very clear instructions on how to make a zine. This was Raina, Telgemeier, and Scott McCloud's book. Oh, one more cool thing about this book. At the back of the book, you get to meet Raina and Scott. They drew themselves, and they explain like who made what in the book, and it's like an interview asking some pretty cool questions. Where did the idea come from? How did they meet? Making comics is hard. How do you get better? Are the characters in this book based on real people? Scott, how do you know so much about the ideas behind comics? Really great information. Definitely worth a read. If you got kids, definitely check it out. And even if you don't, like, I'm an adult, obviously, and I really enjoyed this book. I think I'm not sure if I want to add it to my collection, but I would definitely read it again and recommend it, especially if you're just getting started out. There's a lot of practical, simple ideas, and this book is basically, like I said, it's the kid version of Scott McCloud's Making Comics, and highly recommend this book. So now let's talk about Making Comics, Storytelling Secrets of Comics, Manga, and Graphic Novels from Scott McCloud. And now you're going to see exactly why I chose these two books to go over. This book is my own personal copy. As you can see, I have read and reread this book many times. This is a classic book, and if you have not heard of this book, that's okay, because you're about to hear all about it and see why so many people recommend it, and so many comic artists, maybe the manga artist picked this book up because this book is a whole course on comics all on its own. So that's the spine, that's the back, and like literally all this information, you can see that that's where I had to remove the sticker that was on there. All this information, choose the right moments, frame actions, create varied and compelling new characters, create rich, believable worlds, pick the tools, navigate. Like, he goes through everything in this book. Jeff Smith, Neil Gaiman, Jim Lee, Alan Moore, like, these are big names. This book stays in print. I am pretty sure he is still making money from this book today because of just how crucial this book is. There's many books like this, but this book is the keys to the kingdom, I think. And I have his other books, Understanding Comics, Making Comics, and then Reinventing Comics. And I actually plan on doing another panel deep dive just about those 3 books. So stay on the lookout for that. Let's dig into this. The great thing about this book is that, once again, it's teaching you how to make comics, but it's doing a comic to tell you. It's in comic form to tell you. Some notes here, practice exercises, references, and good to know. Like, literally, I was in school when I first picked up this book a couple years ago. This book is just amazing. Alright, so it is in black and white, but don't let that deter you, because once you start reading it, it just flows through. He introduces himself, he introduces the basics of comics, the different styles, the different techniques, the different tools, and everything that he is introducing. It's in a very simple explanation. You're seeing the pictures, and he's using the comic format to explain comics, which there's a lot. Like, I have some other books that talk about comics in theory and talk about how to make manga and etc., but none of those books go as in detail as this book. Like, if Cartoonist Club is for kids / beginners, this is also still for beginners, but it is, I would say, a little bit, it's more elevated. But I think even a kid could love and enjoy this if they're at the right age. So this is like the very first lesson of how you want to depict your comic, how you want to depict your scene. Do you want to do moment-to-moment action, like shown here? Do you want to do action-to-action? Do you want to do subject-to-subject? Do you want to do scene-to-scene, aspect-to-aspect, non sequitur? What's beautiful about this is, really, you don't have to stick to just one style. All of these, 1 through 6, you're going to, when you're making your comic, you're going to use all of these at some point. Some points you're going to need that moment to moment. You're going to need that action to action. Or when you have talking people, subject to subject, scene to scene, like, all of these techniques can be used. And the way he elaborates on the techniques, it's just, if you were ever curious about anything comic related, this is the book for that. I want to jump ahead. So after each section of the book, he also has a note section that goes more in detail, like some side things that he couldn't quite fit into the main chapter, but additional notes, and I just ate this stuff up. Another beautiful thing about this book are the exercises that he puts in the book. Obviously, they're all optional, but I took these as like personal challenges to see if I could do it and to just get the practice. Like, if you don't have any ideas, or you don't know where to start, or you just want to try something out, these ideas are great. And here again, if you remember in Cartoonist Club, the Quanto comics is one of the things here. He's got the 24-hour comic, 6 transitions. The queen died and the king died of grief. Boy meets girl, boy loses girl. Like, these, it's just full of ideas. And there's exercises for each chapter. Like, plenty of ideas. that you can just start making comics. So some of the things that I reference tabbed here was like this page: anger, disgust, fear, joy, sadness, surprise. Just the way he did these faces. Like, these are the 6 basic emotions, and like he also did this in the Cartoonist Club as well, Raina and Scott, but they used emojis instead to update the times. But it's still the same concept. And then I loved how I actually need to revisit this book. I haven't visited it in a long time, but disgust plus joy, you. Anger plus disgust, outrage. And he's mixing and matching, and this is another exercise that you can do, is take elements of different faces and see what you can come up with. See how you can get those subtle expressions. You don't have to stick to just the basics. It's really about mixing and matching those emotions. And to elevate that step on an artist level, elevate that a step further, rotate the head. Because drawing a full face from a front view, that's beginner. That's easy. You can do that. Do it in 3/4 view for both sides, left and right. And then do it from worm's eye view or bird's eye view if you want an extra challenge. Because if you can emote those faces from those angles, I mean, your art, I can only imagine. I need to do this. That might be a challenge one day that we do. This was actually where I last left off. This was like my second or third time reading this book, but he has a mini script for a comic, and it's the idea behind it is that he's giving you the words, he's giving you a situation, he's giving you characters. All he's asking you to do it is interpret it into your own style. And I think that's so awesome. And he also does each story a couple different ways, because the interpretation of the story could be taken different ways. More notes, just really great stuff, and more exercises. Targeting expressions. Pick 2 expressions from the list and draw a face to match each. Confident, uncertain, tired, mischievous. Targeting poses. Pick 1 or 2 attitudes from the list and draw a body to match. Aggressive, tired, stubborn, pompous. Like, these are very practical exercises to get you thinking like a comic artist. Chapter 3, The Power of Words. Now, this big text, of course, I read all of it, but he really gets into like how to balance. And to be honest, I probably need to reread this, because even while I'm writing stories, sometimes I want my characters to say a lot when I need to say less in the best way possible. And the way he explains this, word specific, picture specific, duo specific, I actually hate this. But I know that there's writers and artists that do it. So it's good to include it, but this specific one, I hate it. I feel like you either need to do one or the other. You don't need to tell me he jabbed his finger and also, I jabbed my finger at you. Like, it doesn't make sense to do both, because comics can do both. The words can do one, and the art can do the other. Intersecting, interdependent, parallel, montage. I love interdependent. Words and pictures combining to convey an idea that neither would convey alone. I'm so happy for you, but she's crying. Like, I love subtext. I love conflict of words and emotions, because I want the reader to read more into what's happening, not just take everything at a surface level. But yeah, he goes into detail about how to use words and pictures at the same time with balance, and I need to reread this book. I forgot how amazing it was. That's definitely going to be on my to-do list. He also has this cool section about words and sound effect. Bang, splat, with the blood splatter. Boom. I love this. Blam, scream, buzz. And like, literally, special effects are so important. It's just so important. Like, there's sometimes like the picture is just not enough, and you need that sound effect to get the final point across. And these are just a few basic ideas, but you can have fun with it. And like I said, of course, more exercises. Like, I love, like, if you buy this book and you only like skim through it, it's worth it for the exercise ideas alone, because it's all contained and it's all very specific. You don't have to make a whole comic to learn all these things. You can focus on separate parts of the comic, and then you can start piecing it together, and then eventually you'll have a whole comic. I mark this as good to know. Write for yourself. If you just write the kinds of stories you think others will want to read, you'll be competing with cartoonists who are far more enthusiastic for that kind of comic than you are, and they'll kick your ass every time. Or, to put it another way, just because you've decided to sell out, that doesn't mean that anyone's going to buy. Yeah, I agree. I'm not going to go through the whole book, but I just wanted to really spotlight why I love this book, why I think it's great, why it's worth it. Please definitely check it out. Check out both of these books, The Cartoonist Club, Making Comics. Have you heard of these books? Have you read them? I'm willing to bet more people have read Making Comics than The Cartoonist Club, but if you have the ability to check out your local library and they have a copy, check it out or buy it. It's definitely worth it, either or. I think both books, for a comic artist, even a writer, it's worth reading this, because I think more writers in comics need to get educated in how the artist even sees a comic, because maybe writers wouldn't overwrite if they too were aware of all the things that an artist is thinking of while they're drawing. If you have checked these books out, let me know what you thought of them. Let me know if you're interested in checking them out, and if you're interested in that panel deep dive where I go through all of Scott McCloud's books as a top-down overview, let me know that in the comment section below too. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Panel Deep Dive, and until next time, keep drawing.